Okay, let's unpack this. When you hear Arizona, you probably picture the Grand Canyon, right? Maybe some of those classic saguaro cacti, and definitely a whole lot of dry, relentless heat.
That's the postcard image for sure.
And you'd be right about those visual icons, but as our sources show, those common images, they barely scratch the surface of a state that is, well, arguably the most complex in the American West. Geographically, historically, you name it.
But that's absolutely the core challenge of understanding Arizona, isn't it?
It really is.
Our mission for this deep dive is to move past those simple postcards and give you a fast, thorough understanding of what Arizona truly is.
Okay.
A state defined by this stark geographical duality. You've got snow and desert.
Right next to each other, practically.
Exactly. Then there's this centuries-old complex history. We're talking about deep roots in Native American nations and Spanish conquest, massive population concentration.
And a pivotal, often volatile role in modern American political and economic life.
Right.
It's always in the news. So we're going to cover the terrain, the triumphs, and the turbulence that have shaped the Grand Canyon state. Just for a quick glance to set the stage, Arizona is huge. It's the 6th largest state by area.
And that came in late. It was the 48th state admitted to the Union, the last of the contiguous states.
On a very specific and, I guess, symbolic date, February 14th, 1912.
Which is where one of its lesser-known, but pretty delightful nicknames comes from, the Valentine State.
I like that.
Yeah, but of course you're far more likely to hear the Grand Canyon State, or, historically, the Copper State.
Right.
And its official motto, Ditat Deus, is Latin for God enriches.
A motto that's deeply tied to its initial territorial wealth, which was all about resource extraction.
It was.
And that wealth ultimately consolidated in Phoenix, which serves as both the capital and the largest city. And it's a colossal city. I mean, it's significant because it's the 5th most populous city and the single most populous state capital in the entire U.S.
That's a staggering statistic. And its location makes Arizona a major geographical anchor. It shares the famous Four Corners Monument with Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. It also borders Nevada and California, and of course it shares a long, critical international boundary with the Mexican states of Sonora and Baja California. It truly sits at a crossroads.
So let's start where every great story begins. The name. Where does Arizona actually come from? Because this isn't just a straightforward etymological tale. There's a fascinating linguistic skirmish over its true origin. This is where it gets really interesting.
Well, most sources agree the name has an indigenous origin and that it's rooted in the O'odham language.
Okay.
The Spanish picked up the word Arizonac, which came from the O'odham name Alionac.
And what did that mean?
And that phrase has a beautiful descriptive meaning. Small spring.
A small spring in the middle of the desert. That's poetic.
It is. It suggests the name was initially given by Spanish colonists to a specific area near a silver mining camp in Sonora, right near the modern border.
And the settlers, hearing that O'odham pronunciation, interpreted it phonetically as Arizona.
Pretty much.
It's a lovely descriptor that roots the state right in its arid yet subtly watery geography. It's a testament to finding life in the desert. But that's not the only theory, is it?
No, and the alternative theory is surprisingly persistent, and it's rooted in European settlement patterns.
Oh.
There are some who advocate for a Basque origin, Haritz Ona.
Which means?
The good oak.
The good oak. So small spring versus good oak.
Exactly. This theory stems from the fact that there were, numerous Basque shepherds in the area during the colonial period, and a native-born Mexican of Basque ancestry is known to have established a settlement named Arizona between 1734 and 1736.
So he brought the name with him.
That's the theory. That settlement was in what is now Sonora, and it became notable after a silver discovery there around 1737. So you have these two competing origins.
It reflects the multiple cultures vying to define this land. But regardless of the name's exact birthplace, the land itself has a deep, complex history that predates the U.S. by centuries. Before the Spanish, it was home to incredibly sophisticated Native American civilizations.
That's a crucial point. We often leap to European history, but the land was settled by cultures like the Hohokam,
famous for their canals.
Famous for their incredibly complex canal systems that enabled agriculture in the desert. Then you also have the Mogollon and the ancestral Puebloan cultures. Their ruins, the massive pueblos and cliff dwellings, they still attract thousands of visitors and show a mastery of arid land engineering and survival.
European contact begins relatively late compared to the East Coast, You have Marcos de Niza, a Spanish Franciscan, making initial contact in 1539.
Right, and he was followed almost immediately by Coronado's famous 1540-1542 expedition.
Searching for Cibola, the 7 cities of gold.
The legendary cities, yes. But what kind of lasting impact did that have?
Not much, right?
Surprisingly little, at least initially. The Spanish didn't find the gold they were looking for, so settlement remained sparse for over a century.
So when does that change?
The first major, enduring European footprint came in the late 17th century with the Jesuit missions. A man named Father Kino led the development of missions in the Pimeria Alta.
And that's a region covering southern Arizona and northern Sonora.
Right. Starting in the 1690s, these missions were pivotal. They introduced European livestock, crops, and, new organizational structures.
And then Spain solidified its claim by founding presidios.
Exactly. Fortified military towns. At Tubac in 1752 and then Tucson in 1775.
So Tucson has been a continuously occupied European or American settlement for nearly 250 years. That's real depth.
It is.
And when Mexico achieved independence from Spain in 1821, this land, it transitioned into the Mexican territory of Alta California and Nuevo Mexico.
Which sets the stage for the American acquisition. After the Mexican-American War, the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ceded most of the region to the U.S. This created the New Mexico Territory.
But, and this is a crucial detail that shaped the state's final geometry, the strip of land below the Gila River, the southernmost portion of modern Arizona, was not included in that treaty.
That's right. It was acquired later in 1853 via the Gadsden Purchase.
Okay, so why was that final strip of land, that relatively small piece, so strategically crucial that the U.S. paid Mexico $10 million for it?
It was almost entirely about infrastructure and logistics. Specifically, it was about securing the most viable southern route for a transcontinental railway.
Ah, the railroad.
Surveyors recognized that the land acquired in 1848 included mountains and really difficult terrain along the Gila River.
Not ideal for laying track.
Not at all. The Gadsden Purchase secured lower, flatter terrain, perfect for laying track without having to traverse the major mountain ranges that defined the earlier acquisition. That decision truly cemented the final, almost rectangular shape of Arizona.
But even after the purchase, the area wasn't stable. It was administered as part of the New Mexico Territory, which led to continuous disputes over governance.
And then the Civil War complicated everything dramatically.
How so?
The Civil War was a geographic crisis for the territory. In 1862, settlers in the southern portion, who were motivated by their economic connection to Texas and a desire for greater self-governance separate from Santa Fe, they seceded.
They seceded from the Union's territory.
They did. They formed the Confederate Territory of Arizona. They actively supplied the Confederate government with men and equipment and even saw military action.
And that's where the famous Battle of Picacho Pass in 1862 comes in. It's recognized as the westernmost military engagement of the entire Civil War.
A small but highly symbolic fight between Confederate troops and the California column of the Union Army.
It was symbolic, yes.
And in response, the federal government moved quickly. They declared a new U.S. Arizona Territory in 1863, consisting of the western half of the existing New Mexico Territory.
In this division, carved essentially along the 109th meridian, that's what formed the foundation of the modern state's borders.
That's the line.
The first territorial capital was Prescott, founded in 1864, which followed a central Arizona gold rush. So again, this territory was being built around mineral extraction, not just agriculture.
And that's where the political instability began. The capital moved controversially, first from Prescott to Tucson, then back to Prescott, and finally settling in Phoenix.
These weren't just administrative whims.
Not at all. They reflected intense political rivalries as different population centers gained and lost influence. Due to mining booms, military posts, the arrival of the railroads, it just showcases how dynamic and unsettled that territorial period was until statehood was finally achieved in 1912.
And that history lives in the land itself. We've talked about how Arizona came to be, but let's look at the incredible geography that had to be conquered to build a state here. We mentioned it's the 6th largest state by area. But what stands out to me is the sheer scale of public land ownership. Only about 15% is privately owned.
That land ownership structure is unique, and it's foundational to the state's character.
85% public.
The remaining 85% is comprised of national forests, Bureau of Land Management territory, national park land, state trust land, and crucially, about 1/4 of the entire state is made up of 27 federally recognized Native American reservations.
Wow. 1/4 of the state.
That concentration of native land is unparalleled in the contiguous U.S. and deeply informs policy, water rights, and culture.
And this expansive area creates that duality we're diving into now, the extreme climate divide. Most people associate Arizona solely with the southern desert climate. Phoenix, Tucson, the Sun Belt.
That's the basin and range portion. Southern Arizona is defined by its low elevation and an exceptionally hot, dry desert climate. Summers are brutal. They frequently hit 90 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
And sometimes higher.
Oh yeah, occasionally exceeding 125. The winter appeal, the entire draw for the snowbird economy, is those mild, beautiful winters, where temperatures typically range from 40 to 75 degrees.
But drive just a few hours north and you find a completely different world.
Completely. The high country of the Colorado Plateau. This is northern Arizona areas like Flagstaff and the White Mountains, with actual forests of pine, Douglas fir, and spruce, deep canyons, moderate summers, and significant winter snowfalls.
It's the dramatic difference elevation makes. Flagstaff sits at nearly 7,000 feet above sea level.
Whereas Phoenix is around 1,100 feet. That difference is enough to support major ski resorts near Flagstaff and even in the mountains east of Tucson.
The contrast is extraordinary. You can legitimately ski in the morning and be lounging by a pool in the desert heat by afternoon.
It's a real thing.
Let's take extremes for a minute, because Arizona holds some shocking temperature records. The all-time high of 128 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded in Lake Havasu City, but the all-time low,
A spine-chilling minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, recorded at Holly Lake in the White Mountains in 1971.
that's a 168-degree range in extremes. That's wild.
And that speaks to the power of the arid environment to shed heat. This brings us to a crucial technical concept, the diurnal temperature swing.
Okay, what's that?
In undeveloped desert areas above 2,500 feet, you can see massive temperature differences, up to 50 or 60 degrees, between the daytime high and the nighttime low.
Wait, why exactly does the heat escape so rapidly at night in the desert compared to, say, a humid area like Florida?
It's physics. Humidity, or water vapor, acts like a greenhouse gas. It traps heat near the surface.
Like a blanket.
Exactly like a blanket. In the Arizona desert, the humidity is critically low, especially outside the monsoon season. There's no blanket of water vapor to hold the heat in, so as soon as the sun sets, the heat rapidly radiates into space and you get that sharp drop.
But in the urban centers, you have the opposite problem, the urban heat island.
Precisely. The urban heat island effect occurs because concrete, asphalt, and buildings, they absorb and store tremendous amounts of heat during the day, and then they release it slowly at night.
So Phoenix stays hot.
In Phoenix, this results in much higher nighttime lows than in the surrounding desert. And this has significant public health implications, as the body can't recover from daytime heat stress without cooler nights. It's a defining challenge of managing these mega desert cities.
And the climate isn't just defined by dry heat. Arizona has two distinct rainy seasons, which brings some of the most dramatic weather on the continent, the famous summer monsoon.
The monsoon is transformative. While the state averages only about 12.7 inches of rain annually, a significant portion of the summer rain is concentrated in July and August.
And it's spectacular.
What makes it spectacular is the dramatic rise in the dew point. Warm, moist air is pulled up from the Gulf of California and the Pacific, resulting in intense cloudbursts, dramatic lightning displays, and brief, torrential downpours.
Brief but violent, and often leading to immediate catastrophe on the ground.
Exactly. These downpours are notorious for causing flash floods in dry riverbeds, or arroyos, known locally as washes.
So water rises almost instantly.
It's terrifyingly fast. This danger is so specific and so frequent that the Arizona legislature had to enact what is locally known as the Stupid Motorist Law.
That's amazing. A law named after a common-sense failure. What does that law actually entail?
It means that if you drive into a flowing wash or an area marked as flooded and you need to be rescued, you can be billed for the cost of that rescue operation.
A literal financial penalty.
It's aimed at deterring drivers from attempting to cross what appears to be shallow water but can instantly sweep a vehicle away. It truly reflects how rapidly and dangerously the weather can shift.
Now let's pivot to the iconic natural features. The Grand Canyon is magnificent, obviously, but what story does it really tell, besides being very, very large?
The Grand Canyon is magnificent because it is essentially 2 billion years of Earth's history exposed. It's a masterclass in geology.
2 billion years.
It's carved primarily by the relentless erosive power of the Colorado River, stretching 277 miles long and over a mile deep in places. The exposure of rock layers, from the Vishnu schist at the bottom to the Kaibab limestone at the rim, provides an unparalleled look into deep time.
And Theodore Roosevelt was a huge proponent of preserving it.
A major proponent of its national park designation. He viewed it as a crown jewel that must be preserved from commercial exploitation.
Then you have the Mogollon Rim, which many people outside the state don't realize exists, but it's a critical line that splits the state's environments.
It's the geological wall. The Mogollon Rim is a dramatic, almost 2,000-foot escarpment that cuts across the state center, running diagonally from west central to east central Arizona.
And that's the edge of the Colorado Plateau.
It marks the edge, yes, delineating the forested, high-elevation region from the lower basin and range desert lands to the south. It's a true defining feature.
And speaking of colossal impacts, we have the Barringer meteorite crater west of Winslow.
That site is world famous. It's the most well-preserved meteorite impact site on Earth.
Wow.
It was created about 50,000 years ago and is nearly a mile wide and 570 feet deep. What's critical for scientific study is that it's not heavily eroded, so geologists can precisely study the dynamics of a hypervelocity impact. It's a staggering site.
And a fun fact, it's privately owned.
It is.
And finally, a quirky geographical highlight that causes chaos for people trying to schedule interstate phone calls twice a year. The time anomaly.
Arizona is one of only 2 states in the U.S., along with Hawaii, that does not observe daylight saving time.
But here's the complexity.
The complexity is that the Navajo Nation, which occupies a massive area in the state's northeast, does observe DST.
Wait, so if I'm driving from Flagstaff, which doesn't observe DST, onto the Navajo Nation in summer, I lose an hour. And then if I drive back across the border, I gain it back.
Exactly. And it gets even more complicated because the Hopi Reservation, which is geographically surrounded by the Navajo Nation, does not observe DST.
That's incredible.
So you can have a dizzying set of time changes just driving through the northeastern corner of the state. It really demonstrates the intricate layers of governance and sovereignty within Arizona.
That dual geography and the promise of that sunny, mild winter climate have fundamentally shaped Arizona's demographics. It led to one of the greatest periods of migration in post-war U.S. history.
The growth rate has been phenomenal, and it accelerated dramatically since the 1950s.
How fast are we talking?
Arizona was the second fastest growing state in the 1990s, second only to Nevada. To illustrate the scale, the state population was only about 294,000 in 1910. Today, it's over 7.5 million.
That is a truly explosive demographic shift.
It's massive.
And that massive growth is heavily concentrated. When we talk about Arizona's population, we are talking almost exclusively about the 2 major metro areas.
Precisely. Metropolitan Phoenix, with over 4.7 million residents, and Tucson, with over 1 million, are home to about 5/6 of the state's entire population.
And Metro Phoenix alone is 2/3 of all Arizonans.
It is. This concentration is directly linked to one key technological factor: the widespread use of air conditioning, which took off dramatically in the 1950s.
Air conditioning wasn't just a comfort. It was an economic engine. It made the state habitable for industrial-scale growth and corporate headquarters in the summer months.
It was an absolute necessity for the Sun Belt boom. And coupled with that, the development of specialized age-restricted communities drew massive inward migration.
You're talking about places like Sun City.
Developers like Del Webb pioneered that model with Sun City, which was established in 1960. These were specifically designed, age-restricted communities catering exclusively to retirees, the snowbirds, who wanted to escape harsh northern winters.
And they often only stay during the mild winter months.
Right, which created a new type of seasonal economy and demographic profile.
Let's focus on those key urban centers, starting with Phoenix, which dominates Maricopa County. What defines the modern Phoenix experience?
Sprawl and intensity. Phoenix is known for its extremely hot summers, but the foundation of its economic success remains its mild winters. The average high in January is a perfect 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
And the metro area is vast and decentralized.
It is. It's often referred to as the Valley of the Sun, and it encompasses major, distinct suburbs like Mesa, Chandler, Glendale, and Scottsdale. Chandler, for example, is now a major hub for technology and semiconductor manufacturing. It's completely changed its identity from decades ago.
And moving south, we have Tucson in Pima County, the state's second largest. It feels, historically richer. maybe because of its deeper Spanish roots.
Tucson absolutely has deeper roots. It was incorporated in 1877, so it holds the distinction of being the oldest continuously incorporated city in Arizona.
It's home to the University of Arizona.
A major economic driver focused on research in aerospace and defense, and it's right next to the Saguaro National Park, which protects the world's largest collection of saguaro cacti. It has traditionally been seen as a slightly more progressive counterbalance to Phoenix.
Up north, Flagstaff is a completely different world, geographically and climatically.
Flagstaff is a high-altitude tourism hub situated at nearly 7,000 feet. It is surrounded by the largest contiguous ponderosa pine forest in the world.
And it has a significantly cooler climate.
Summer highs typically only around 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and it sits at the base of the San Francisco Peaks, which contains Humphreys Peak, the state's highest point at over 12,000 feet. Its appeal is year-round, linking the Grand Canyon tourists to the ski resorts, and it holds a deep history right along historic U.S. Route 66.
And then, down near the southwestern border, Yuma, defined by its relentless sun and heat, but also a crucial part of the state's agricultural story.
Yuma is routinely one of the hottest cities in the U.S. The average July high is 107. Yet it thrives because it features sunny days 90% of the year.
And that intense solar exposure plus Colorado River water makes it a winter-growing powerhouse.
A massive one. It supplies a huge amount of the nation's winter vegetables. It's also another major winter visitor destination because of that guarantee of clear, sunny weather.
And finally, we can't discuss urban features without mentioning Lake Havasu City and its rather remarkable imported monument.
It's one of the great marketing stunts of the 20th century. Lake Havasu City, developed on the Colorado River, gained international fame because its founder, Robert P. McCulloch, purchased the original London Bridge in 1968
And moved it.
stone by stone from London, England to Arizona.
Wait, how did that actually work? How do you move an entire historic bridge across an ocean and reassemble it in the middle of the desert?
It was dismantled, and each granite block was numbered. Then it was shipped through the Panama Canal to Long Beach, California, trucked overland, and reassembled over a man-made canal connecting the mainland to a small island in Lake Havasu.
That's a remarkable piece of engineering.
And it proved to be an incredibly effective tourist attraction, defining the city's early growth. It highlights the kind of bold, maybe even eccentric vision that helped build the modern state.
Now we move into the deeper historical foundation, the conflicts, settlements, and economic drivers that forged Arizona's identity. We established the earliest Spanish presence with Father Kino's missions in the Pineria Alta region.
Those early missions were crucial. They established the first permanent European settlements and trading routes. By the mid-18th century, Spain had established those presidios at Tubac and Tucson, not just for protection, but to solidify Spain's claim against, well, encroachment and raids from the Apache and other tribes.
After the U.S. acquisitions in 1848 and 1853, the territorial period became defined by a period of brutal economic expansion and conflict, often summarized by the three M's: mining, Mormons, and the military.
That's a perfect distillation of the competing forces. Mining just exploded in the 19th century.
The most famous was the Silver Stampede to Tombstone.
In the 1870s, yes. Known worldwide for its legendary outlaws, lawmen, and the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. But the silver rush was short-lived. The real long-term economic foundation came from copper.
The rise of copper camps like Bisbee and Jerome fundamentally changed the state's economic trajectory.
Absolutely. Copper mining eclipsed precious metals rapidly. By the late 1880s, Arizona's deep copper deposits, particularly the massive open-pit mines, made it the nation's leader.
And this economic shift was so profound that by 1907, Arizona produced more copper than any other state,
Officially earning the nickname the Copper State, and tying that wealth directly to the state's motto, Ditat Deus, God enriches.
But when you look at the labor history and the environmental destruction caused by this resource extraction, doesn't that motto, God enriches, ring a little hollow? Was that wealth truly distributed, or was it a source of ongoing violent conflict?
That's a critical question. The boom and bust cycle was volatile, leaving hundreds of ghost towns. More critically, the profitability relied on cheap labor, which led to intense labor disputes.
And this culminated in one of the darkest moments in Arizona labor history, the Bisbee deportation of 1917.
It did.
This event is often reduced to a footnote, but it was incredibly violent and organized. What exactly happened in Bisbee?
The Bisbee deportation was a reaction by mining companies and local authorities to a strike led by the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, often called the Wobblies.
What were they demanding?
The Bisbee miners demanded better pay, safer working conditions, and an end to discrimination against Mexican and foreign workers. On July 12, 1917, over 2,000 vigilantes, organized by the Copper Queen Mining Company and deputized by the sheriff, swept through the town.
What were their tactics?
They rounded up nearly 1,200 striking miners and suspected IWW sympathizers. They marched them at gunpoint to the local baseball park
And then
loaded them onto 32 filthy cattle cars. They were abandoned without food or water in the middle of the New Mexico desert. This act of extra-legal violence effectively broke the strike and destroyed union organizing in the Copper Belt for decades. It remains a powerful symbol of the tension between corporate wealth and labor rights during that period.
Meanwhile, on the settlement front, Brigham Young, the leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Utah, dispatched Mormons to the territory in the mid to late 19th century. They weren't just settlers, they were engineers of arid land survival.
They were instrumental. They established numerous towns across the central and northern areas, places like Mesa, Snowflake, Heber, and settled crucial parts of the Phoenix Valley.
And their most significant contribution was their expertise in water management.
Absolutely. They built complex ditch and canal systems, even reviving some of the ancient Hohokam canals that made large-scale agriculture possible in the otherwise unforgiving desert.
We mentioned the Civil War skirmish at Picacho Pass, but Arizona was also the site of a very late engagement in the long-running American Indian Wars.
Indeed. While the major conflicts with the Apache and Navajo had largely concluded, the final military engagement in the American Indian Wars is considered to be a battle just west of Nogales in 1918.
So who was fighting?
U.S. soldiers stationed on the border confronted Yaqui Indians, who were using Arizona as a base for raids against Mexican settlements as part of their own ongoing wars against the Mexican government. It's a complex piece of history showing the spillover of international conflict onto the border.
Moving into the 20th century, the Great Depression hit the state's economy, cotton farming, and copper mining extremely hard.
Yet, it was during this depression that a new economic pillar began to form: tourism. The 1920s and 30s saw the development of upscale destinations like the Arizona Biltmore Hotel in Phoenix and the Wigwam Resort.
And the popularization of dude ranches.
Places like the KL Bar in Wickenburg, which allowed tourists to experience the manufactured romance of the Old West, laying the foundation for the modern hospitality industry.
World War II deeply impacted Arizona, not just through economic activity and military bases, but through government-mandated incarceration.
The state was crucial to the war effort. It hosted German prisoner of war camps. The site of one large POW camp in the Phoenix area was later purchased by the Maytag family and developed into the Phoenix Zoo.
Huh.
More tragically, Arizona also housed Japanese-American internment camps, like the Gila River Relocation Center and one near Tucson, where thousands of American citizens and residents were unjustly confined.
And we have to acknowledge the forced assimilation policies against Native American children during this era, policies that left deep intergenerational scars.
That's absolutely necessary context. Arizona was home to federal Indian boarding schools, most notoriously the Phoenix Indian School.
And the explicit goal was cultural genocide.
It was, forcing children to cut their hair, take and use English names, speak only English, and abandon their native religions. This systematic attempt to suppress Native identities had lasting effects, but, ironically, also fueled a resurgence of activism among those who went through the system.
And that rising activism led directly to a monumental civil rights victory. The right to vote for Native Americans living on reservations was long prohibited due to legal interpretations classifying them as being under federal guardianship.
That legal barrier was overturned in a landmark case in 1948, Harrison and Austin v. Levine. The suit was filed by two WWII Indian veterans from the Fort McDowell Indian Reservation who had been refused voter registration in Maricopa County.
And the Arizona Supreme Court ruled in their favor.
They did, establishing the voting rights for Native Americans in the state. This was a monumental victory that significantly increased the political power of Native American nations and veterans in the state's elections, a power that continues to grow today.
Let's turn now to the identity of Arizona today, shaped by centuries of migration, conquest, and indigenous presence. The state is profoundly diverse, starting with the fact that its history and culture are intrinsically linked to 27 distinct Native American nations.
It is the foundation. Arizona is home to 27 federally recognized tribes. The Navajo Nation is absolutely the dominant force here. It is the largest in the state and the entire country, boasting over 300,000 citizens.
And its sheer geographical and cultural presence across the northeastern corner is defining.
It is.
Looking at overall demographics, what are the primary ancestry groups driving the population figures for the general population?
Given the proximity to Mexico, the largest ancestry group is Mexican, accounting for almost 28% of the population. This gives the state its strong Hispanic and Latino character.
And after that?
This is followed by German at 12%, English at almost 10%, Irish at 8.5%, and African at 6.4%.
And Navajo ancestry accounts for 2.2% statewide.
Right, but of course their presence is geographically concentrated.
And this diversity translates directly into language statistics, where Arizona really stands out in the contiguous 48 states.
It's a linguistic powerhouse. While 73% of the population speaks English only at home, Spanish is the largest non-English language at a significant 21%.
But critically, Arizona holds the largest number of Native American language speakers in the continental U.S.
It does. Over 85,000 individuals speak Navajo, making up about 2% of the statewide population.
And that concentration is truly visible in specific counties.
Yes. Apache County, located in the far northeast corner, has the single highest concentration of Native American language speakers in the entire United States, demonstrating that these languages are not just historical artifacts, but living, thriving linguistic cultures.
Moving into the cultural realm, Arizona has carved out a distinctive space in arts, film, and music, particularly regarding indigenous culture.
Absolutely. Arizona is a world-recognized center of Native American art. The Heard Museum in Phoenix is a major institution, attracting about 250,000 visitors annually, and it houses extensive collections.
In this centerpiece is the Barry Goldwater collection
of 437 historic Hopi Kachina dolls, illustrating a complex intersection of political history and cultural preservation.
And Arizona has been a popular backdrop and setting for Hollywood because of those unique desert and mountain landscapes.
The landscape is a star in itself. It's the setting for films ranging from the Coen brothers' comedy Raising Arizona to the opening, iconic desert drive scenes of Alfred Hitchcock's classic Psycho.
And for sci-fi fans, one of the most memorable climaxes in cinematic history, the final rendezvous in the 1984 film Starman, takes place right at the Barringer meteor crater outside Winslow.
A perfect setting.
And in music, Arizona is immortalized in some of the most famous American songs of the last 50 years.
It's a recurring, often romanticized feature. The state features heavily in classic rock and country. We all know the iconic line from the Eagles, "Take It Easy." JoJo left his home in Tucson, Arizona.
Glenn Campbell popularized the classic melancholy ballad By the Time I Get to Phoenix.
And George Strait cemented the state's arid nature using the phrase oceanfront property in Arizona as a common metaphor for an obvious sucker proposition or a falsehood.
Plus, the state has produced serious rock talent that defined multiple generations.
Phoenix is the birthplace of shock rocker Alice Cooper and the late Chester Bennington of Linkin Park. Maynard James Keenan of Tool and A Perfect Circle fame has made Cornville, near Sedona, his permanent home, where he runs a winery.
And the state also fostered a powerful alternative scene,
giving rise to bands like the Gin Blossoms and Jimmy Eat World, alongside a significant heavy metal scene centered in Phoenix with bands like Soulfly and Gatecreeper.
Finally, let's touch on the religious landscape, which is largely influenced by the state's migration patterns.
Historically, the largest denominational groups reflect Spanish and later Anglo-Saxon migration. You have the Catholic Church, which has the highest number of overall adherents,
and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Due to the density of their earlier settlements, they have the largest number of congregations. Non-denominational evangelical Protestants are also a major force.
And one striking point, reflecting the modern Sunbelt influx, is the growth of those who choose no affiliation.
That's a consistent demographic trend, often seen in rapidly growing Western states. The irreligious or agnostic population, those categorized as unaffiliated, is substantial, consistently ranging from 24 to 31% in recent studies.
And that proportion is generally higher than in most other traditional U.S. states.
It reflects the fluid, non-traditional identity of the new migrants.
Moving to the economic reality, let's revisit the historical foundation, the 5 C's. That was the state's economic identity for decades. Copper, cotton, cattle, citrus, and climate for tourism. How relevant is that model today?
The 5 Cs are still relevant, but now they serve as the foundation for a much more complex economy. Copper remains critically important. Arizona still accounts for about two-thirds of the nation's total copper output, so the Copper State nickname is still entirely accurate.
But the modern structure has shifted dramatically away from relying solely on resource extraction.
It has. The economy is moderately diversified, but the largest sectors now are healthcare, transportation, and government. In fact, the state government is the single largest overall employer.
And in terms of private industry.
The state has positioned itself as a major hub for advanced manufacturing and technology. The state's 2023 median household income was just under $75,000, ranking 19th nationally. That reflects its status as a growing, modern economic center.
Looking at the private sector, who are the employment giants operating out of Arizona today?
The largest private employer by a significant margin is Banner Health, reflecting the massive growth and the healthcare needs of the large aging population.
And after that?
Major retailers like Walmart and Kroger follow, reflecting the logistical importance of the state as a distribution hub. And crucially, giants like Wells Fargo, Raytheon, the defense contractor, and Intel for semiconductor manufacturing are massive employers. Intel's presence alone with its high-tech fabrication plants signals the profound economic shift.
That shift from copper to chips reflects a global supply chain evolution, but it also ties back directly to the state's primary challenge: water.
Absolutely. The need for massive amounts of water for both agriculture, cotton, citrus, and now for high-tech manufacturing.
Semiconductor fabrication requires astonishing amounts of ultra-pure water.
It does, and that creates constant strategic tension. Data from April 2025 shows massive employment growth in trade, transportation and utilities, education and health services, and professional and business services sectors that rely on the state's infrastructure and climate rather than just digging up raw material.
That original C for climate still comes through in the unique aspects of Arizona's agriculture, particularly in Yuma.
Yuma is known as the winter salad bowl of America. Its guaranteed sunshine and access to the Colorado River allow it to supply the nation with a huge percentage of its winter vegetables: durum wheat, lettuce, spinach, watermelon. Romaine farms, in particular, operate at massive scale there.
But agriculture in this climate faces unique and persistent challenges, particularly from invasive species.
It does. The whitefly Bemisia tabaci provides a perfect illustration of ongoing biological invasion. The original indigenous A biotype was displaced in the 1980s by the aggressive B biotype, introduced through the poinsettia trade.
And then another one arrived.
Around 2004, the highly invasive Q biotype, which originated in the Mediterranean, was also discovered in the state, often arriving on ornamental plants. This constant influx of new biotypes makes pest management challenging and incredibly expensive for Arizona's farmers.
There's a unique, almost strange local behavior noted for the Colorado potato beetle in Arizona.
Correct. The Colorado potato beetle, or CPB, is notorious worldwide for devastating potato crops. But in Arizona, unusually for this species, the local population commonly feeds on silverleaf nightshade.
Which is typically a less attractive host for the beetle.
Right. It suggests a unique adaptation or biological difference specific to the Arizona climate.
Let's move to transportation, the modern arteries connecting these fast-growing population centers. Arizona is served by 6 interstates, which is quite a lot for a desert state.
It connects the whole Southwest. You have the north-south routes like I-17 connecting Phoenix to Flagstaff and I-19 from Tucson to Nogales. Then the crucial east-west routes, I-8, I-10, and I-40, which follows the historic Route 66 corridor.
But what defines the urban experience in Phoenix is the complex urban network that developed around this rapid growth.
That is the complex freeway system, most notably the massive Loop 101, which is a key part of Phoenix's Beltway system. Managing traffic in a city designed around the automobile requires these dense, multi-layered networks.
And the rail system tells an interesting story about connectivity, or rather, the lack thereof in the capital city.
Amtrak service is split. The Southwest Chief Route serves northern Arizona, stopping at Flagstaff and Winslow. The southern route, with the Texas Eagle and Sunset Limited, serves Tucson and Yuma.
But here's the kicker.
Phoenix lost direct Amtrak rail service back in 1996 due to a rerouting away from the city center. So the largest metropolitan area in the state currently lacks direct interstate passenger rail connectivity.
Finally, public transportation is developing to support those massive urban populations.
Phoenix is served by the Valley Metro Rail, a light rail system completed in 2008. Tucson also has a key piece of public infrastructure, The Sunlink streetcar system, launched in 2014, which is crucial for connecting the main University of Arizona campus with the downtown area.
Now we enter the political sphere, where Arizona has been a major focus of national attention in recent years. Let's start with the government structure in Phoenix.
Phoenix is the capital, and the original Capitol building, dedicated in 1901 when Arizona was still a territory, is known for its distinctive copper dome.
Symbolic of the copper that drove the state's economy.
Literally reflecting it, yes. It no longer houses the legislature, but is preserved as a museum.
And the Capitol complex features a deeply poignant memorial connecting Arizona to one of the most significant events in 20th century American history.
It does. The Wesley Bolin Memorial Plaza includes a critical piece of American history. The actual anchor and signal mast from the USS Arizona, the battleship sunk during the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. It's a powerful, tangible link to national sacrifice.
Moving to the executive branch, Arizona has a unique history regarding its governors, particularly female leadership.
Arizona is currently led by Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat. Historically, Arizona holds the remarkable distinction of having had 5 female governors, more than any other state in the nation.
And in 1998, women were elected to all 5 top statewide offices.
Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer, and Superintendent of Public Instruction. It was a feat that demonstrated a unique level of political empowerment for women in the state.
It also has a unique structure regarding the governorship and succession that is currently in transition.
That's right. Arizona is traditionally one of only 5 states that operates without a lieutenant governor, meaning the elected Secretary of State is first in line for succession.
But that's changing.
It is. Voters approved a constitutional amendment to create the position, with elections starting in 2026. So the governor and lieutenant governor will run on a joint ticket, bringing Arizona in line with most of the nation.
The political map, however, is not geographically balanced. It's heavily skewed by population concentration.
Dramatically so. The state is divided into 15 counties, but Maricopa County, home to Phoenix, is overwhelmingly dominant. It holds 61.8% of the state's total population.
So Maricopa County is a central political and economic force.
Its voter turnout and political leanings often determine the outcome of statewide and national elections.
This leads directly into the political culture, which is dominated by a clear rivalry between Maricopa County, Phoenix, and Pima County, Tucson.
Historically, Maricopa was reliably Republican from the 1950s onward, fueled by the fast-growing conservative Sun Belt suburbs. Pima County, meanwhile, home to the University of Arizona and a long tradition of border community progressivism, has been reliably more Democratic. The tension between those two population centers drove state politics for decades.
But the state's presidential voting trend has shown massive instability recently. It was reliably Republican for 40 years until Bill Clinton broke that streak in 1996. Then it went back to Republican until 2020, when Joe Biden won the state. What is driving this intense recent shift toward battleground status?
It's largely demographic change within Maricopa County. The massive influx of new residents, many from California, the Midwest, and other more politically diverse regions, has diluted the traditional conservative base in the suburbs.
And the voting power of younger voters and Latino voters has increased substantially.
Right. This created a situation where in 2020, Maricopa flipped, enabling Biden's narrow statewide win.
Yet the pendulum swung back dramatically in 2024. Former President Donald Trump won the state by a significant margin.
Correct. The 2024 results, where Trump won by 5.5%, highlights just how volatile and hyper-competitive Arizona remains. It's a true battleground state where local demographic shifts, combined with national political trends, ensure that every election is intensely contested and highly unpredictable.
Arizona has also been at the forefront of highly publicized legal battles concerning immigration and voting rights that attracted national attention and often led to Supreme Court intervention.
2 pieces of legislation stand out. First, Proposition 200 in 2004, which was passed by Arizona voters. Proponents argued it was necessary to prevent voter fraud by requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote.
And opponents argued that it was a thinly veiled attempt to suppress minority turnout.
And disproportionately affect naturalized citizens, yes.
And what was the outcome of that battle?
It was ultimately struck down by the Supreme Court in 2013, which ruled that states cannot impose proof of citizenship requirements on federal voting registration forms.
The second, and perhaps more internationally known piece of legislation, was SB 1070 in 2010.
SB 1070, often dubbed the Show Me Your Papers law, was meant to be the toughest immigration law in the U.S. Proponents argued the federal government was failing to secure the border and that the state had a right to protect its sovereignty.
And the law mandated that state law enforcement had to attempt to determine the immigration status of anyone they stopped or arrested if they had reasonable suspicion that the person was an undocumented immigrant.
Which critics argued led to racial profiling and was an attempt by the state to usurp federal authority.
And similar to Prop 200, it faced immediate legal challenge.
Yes. Parts of the law were invalidated by the Supreme Court in 2012, but the most controversial part, the Show Me Your Papers provision, was initially allowed to stand, though subsequent federal rulings limited its enforcement, leaving a complicated legacy. These laws really show Arizona's role as the laboratory for contentious political issues surrounding the border and immigration.
Finally, let's look at recent social issues where Arizona has been making national headlines, particularly concerning reproductive rights.
The state retains the death penalty, notably listing the gas chamber among its authorized methods of execution, a practice that is increasingly rare nationally. On abortion rights, Arizona saw dramatic action in 2024. Following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Arizona voters passed a constitutional amendment recognizing access to abortion, making it the southernmost continental state to codify abortion rights in its constitution.
A significant and rapid shift in public policy.
A huge one.
And the trajectory of same-sex marriage rights is a microcosm of the state's rapid social change over the last 2 decades.
It's a fascinating case study in evolving public opinion. In 2006, Arizona was actually the first state in the U.S. to reject a ballot measure banning same-sex marriage.
But just 2 years later, a ban passed.
In 2008, a slightly different constitutional ban passed with 56% support, aided by major religious campaigning. However, public opinion shifted quickly in the intervening years. Following a federal court ruling, same-sex marriage became legal in Arizona in 2014, and recent polling shows overwhelming public support for the practice today.
To wrap up the identity of Arizona, let's dive into sports, which are a major part of the state's culture and identity, particularly in the Phoenix metro area. The state holds franchises in all the Big Four major leagues.
A true major league city. They field the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL, the Arizona Diamondbacks in MLB, who famously won the World Series in 2001 against the Yankees, the Phoenix Suns in the NBA, and the Phoenix Mercury in the WNBA, who have 3 championships.
The state is also a major host for mega events, proving it can handle massive national crowds and the logistics required.
Arizona has become a reliable rotation point for major events. It has hosted 4 Super Bowls, including Super Bowl 57 in 2023 at State Farm Stadium. It's also a key center for college sports, scheduled to host the NCAA Men's Basketball Final Four again in 2024.
These events generate enormous economic activity for the hospitality sector.
They do.
And speaking of baseball, Arizona is synonymous with spring training, hosting half of Major League Baseball every March.
That's the famous Cactus League. Spring training started there in 1947, launched by the owner of the Cleveland Indians, Bill Veeck, who convinced the New York Giants to try Phoenix instead of Florida.
And it became a permanent fixture.
Bringing in teams and millions of dollars in tourism revenue every spring. The infrastructure, the large number of stadiums and practice facilities has made the region an absolute powerhouse for preseason baseball.
But perhaps the deepest, most history-laden sports tradition in the state belongs to college football, linking the 2 major population centers in a permanent rivalry.
That is the Territorial Cup rivalry between the Arizona State Sun Devils in Tempe and the Arizona Wildcats in Tucson. This rivalry is so old that it predates statehood. It's certified as the oldest rivalry trophy in the NCAA.
The physical trophy itself is incredibly important, isn't it?
It is. The Territorial Cup was first awarded way back in 1889. The fact that the physical trophy is still awarded today underscores how long these 2 population centers, the burgeoning capital region and the established southern city, have competed for regional dominance and prestige.
And now, both schools are moving into the Big 12 Conference.
Ensuring the rivalry continues to define the state's college athletics landscape.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a state that manages to be simultaneously desert-hot and snow-capped, whose immense size is politically defined by 2 dense modern urban centers, and whose identity is rooted in Spanish missions, Wild West mythology, and the profound presence of 27 sovereign Native American nations.
We've seen how Arizona's economic strength moved from the extractive 5 Cs to become a modern hub of high-tech manufacturing, healthcare, and professional services. This was all fueled by that massive Sunbelt migration and, critically, by the successful, if controversial, management of water resources and the deployment of air conditioning technology.
Right.
We also noted that the state is an intense, volatile political battleground, where the outcomes of national elections are now frequently decided by complex demographic shifts.
The history of the land itself is one of resilience and adaptation. From the early Mormon settlements engineering water systems to the development of the snowbird retirement lifestyle. But the future, as we discussed in the geography section, comes with a stark warning that challenges the very foundation of this prosperity.
Absolutely. We highlighted the 2020 study warning that climate change, by making the summers increasingly severe, could render 6 of Arizona's 15 counties essentially uninhabitable for humans by 2040 to 2060 due to extreme heat and aridity.
The very thing that drew people, the climate, is becoming the biggest threat.
Oh, it is.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. Modern Arizona was built on the ingenious management of its extreme environment, turning a challenging climate into an economic asset, the climate C. Given the clear warnings that this defining asset is rapidly becoming its most significant liability, how might the next generation of Arizonans innovate to preserve their identity and prosperity? What adaptation beyond the traditional reliance on copper, cotton, and ubiquitous cooling systems will truly define the Arizona of 2050? Will they innovate new forms of water independence, or fundamentally rethink how and where 7.5 million people can sustainably live in the desert?